session as we've been doing with all of these sessions. So what I do is I post them to the website just for a short period of time. So if you do have colleagues who haven't been able to attend, then we have that available. So we'll put it up on our webpage and keep it up for a few days, and then we'll get the free webinars going again, probably starting in the fall. So this will be the last one before the start of summer. But well, summer's already started. It just doesn't feel that way quite yet. Everybody, welcome back. It's been a lot of fun doing these quick 30-minute storytelling sessions with all of you. And I would love to hear now if anyone has had an opportunity to put to practice some of the pieces we've been talking about. We talked about how to create a transcendent hero. So, what does a hero look like? Why is that so important as a focal point for the story, as the pair of eyes that the audience gets to view the information through? And we've also talked about how this structure ties directly into our willingness or motivation to make a decision and act. So I'm just curious, for those of you who have been with me in session 1 or in session 2, has anyone had a chance to put any of this to practice? Do you have a story to tell?
I do not, but I was hoping I would. So I definitely got pushed back. But I'm looking for the time when I can actually put this into practice.
Okay, sounds good, Christine. So and we'll look forward to hearing that one then in a future webinar. Anyone else have anything to share?
I've been working on one. It's not to share really, because it's still like a work in progress, but we're doing some kind of rebranding for a new or a group that's existed, and we're kind of shifting their purpose. So I've been thinking about how to apply. They're actually called Change Champions. So it kind of gives like a hero kind of context anyway. So I'm trying to figure out how to weave in the same concept. So.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. I'm just making sure we have met some people. And so we talked last time about different plots that you can use. And I'm sorry, is it Teniel? I'm reading, is it Teniel?
Teniel.
Teniel. Teniel. Sorry. But what did you pick a particular plot for your story, Teniel?
Not yet. I've been thinking more about the hero part. I figure out which hero which one applies and stuff. But I've been giving it a lot of thought. So
yeah. Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear it. Well, and this is so. Every session, what I'm aiming to do is giving you at least one tool that you can put into practice in a message that you're crafting, whether it's for a presentation or a conversation, even a LinkedIn post or any of the social media that you're doing, maybe adjusting something on your website. And today we're talking about 3 things that all typically show up on corporate websites. Vision statements, mission statements, and our list of our corporate values. And it's a noble pursuit to try to figure out what those are. Sometimes they land, and then often they don't. And it's interesting. I was just reading a Forbes article about why vision and mission sometimes doesn't land. And a lot of the reasons given were reasons that we are tackling in our storytelling sessions. That vision and mission sounds too similar, and often that's a factor of them being too vague and imprecise. I remember reading years ago, Ernst & Young, they reported that about 75% of American employees either didn't know what their corporate company's vision statement was, or even if they knew what it was, they didn't understand it. So that's a bit of a problem. And I just bumped into a recent article that had the number around 66%. So maybe a bit of an improvement, but not enough really if we're going to actually shoot for these things or deliver on that mission every time we're in service to our customers or each other. So first of all, I just want to get an idea of what, you showed up to this session because you might be grappling with your vision, mission, or value statements. And I'm curious, what are some of the challenges that come up when it comes time to actually say what these things are in your business? And you can use the chat or you can unmute yourself. And I like to keep this nice and interactive. So happy if you unmute your microphone, but you can put something in the chat as well. What is the challenge when it comes time to craft vision, mission, or value statements?
I think keeping them straight. You said they sound similar when it comes out or whatever, like there's too much similarity between vision, mission, value, well, mission and vision in particular. It gets confusing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Tennille. Anyone else?
Yeah, it's Duncan here. I find they're so bland and generic, and there's no personality behind it. So like, yes, it's corporate, and you have to have that sort of carte blanche. But in the same hand, I think, which goes in part to all you've been teaching us here, is that there needs to be something that stands out, that sets you apart, because we're all unique individuals. I mean, a corporation can be unique on its own accord as well. So that there needs to be something that's not just that branded, generic, buzzwordy type statement.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So they sound very similar. They're getting confused. And then they also sound kind of bland and generic. We don't really know what they mean. These are all problems with the language that we're using. And one of the hallmarks of great storytelling is that our language is specific and descriptive. And this is so important when it comes to telling the story of the company's vision, the company's mission, and the company's values. So first of all, let's kind of separate the three into their separate boxes. So the vision is what you're shooting for. So it's not something you do every day. It's not a service you provide every day, or a product you provide every day, or an attitude or behavior that you provide every day. It's that far off, think of a ship leaving shore and sailing towards a point on the horizon. That's your vision. That's what you're trying to get to. And that vision could be the world in which you operate, but it's somehow going to be different if you get to do all the things you want to do. It could be that your actual business is going to be somehow transformed in a positive way, but the vision is what you're shooting for. Some people call it the North Star. You might have heard that terminology before, but that's what the vision should describe. Now, the mission is literally what you provide every single day. It's the highest level of service, product, behavior, attitude, whatever it is that you decide to focus on as being the primary thing that you try to achieve with your customers, your investors, and your employees every single day. That is your mission. In fact, best to keep it focused on your customers or your investors or your employees, depending on the context in which you're creating this thing. So if you can think of, again, we'll use our ship analogy. So we are sailing towards our vision, which is that point off in the horizon that we're trying to reach. And the mission is how we're going to be in the boat every single day to get us there. What are we going to do? What are we going to do on that ship every single day that will get us there? And then your values are the things that you cherish as you go along. Your values are specifically the behaviors and the attitudes and those wonderful little outcomes that you want to replicate throughout your business. It's the way you want all your sailors behaving on the ship. It's the way you want your captain relating to the sailors on the ship. It's the little achievements on the day-to-day task of sailing off to that distant point. So I hope that helps to create some delineation between these terms, vision, mission, and values. And what I have are some good examples. Actually, you know what? I'll share a story because I think it's really important to talk about why the language matters. You know, Duncan and Tennille both brought up really good points, that you don't want these things to be interchangeable, and you don't want this generic, bland language. And now, as I'm about to tell this story, I'm worried I've told it to you already. Did I tell you about Sean working at Tim Hortons and then the Funky Bagel Shop? Christine, you've been with me from the get-go.
No,
Okay,
no,
okay,
not at
thank
all.
you. Okay.
Nope, but it's making me hungry just thinking of it.
Okay. Okay, I teach too much in a week. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, I might be repeating myself. Okay, so my son, he's 22 now, but when he was 13, he wanted to get a job. And he had me drive him to Tim Hortons, did an interview, got the job. He was so excited, came home with his uniform, couldn't wait to start at Tim Hortons. And Tim Hortons actually had a pretty good training program, and they were very focused on customer service. He actually told me, he said, you know, I'm getting really good customer service training. And I said, oh, that's great. So he worked at Tim Hortons for about a year and a half, and then decided he wanted to move on to something else. And there was this funky little bagel shop on the main street in Canmore where we lived, and he really wanted to work there. So he went off to the bagel shop and did his interview. And during the interview, he told them, you know, I have great customer service training. I've worked at Tim Hortons, and they really trained me in customer service. And they said, oh, that's great, because we really value very important. Well, at Tim Hortons, customer service is very specific. These are long lines at Tim Hortons. Nobody wants to be in that line for long. So at Tim Hortons, customer service is smile and then go get their food quick and make it fast so they can get out of there, because they are trying to get to Golden or Revelstoke or wherever. They don't want to be standing around the Tim Hortons. That is not their destination. So that was Sean's version of customer service, was smile, but move fast. So when he told Rocky Mountain Bagel Co. that he had great customer service, he thought that was great. And they said, perfect, we really value that. So Sean went to work, and he would smile and he would move fast. Well, the problem was the funky little bagel shop on the main street in Canmore is a destination for people. They're happy to be in line. They want a little bit of the chit chat and talk about the mountains and what they're doing that day while they're getting their food. But Sean wasn't doing any of that. But after a few weeks, the manager took him aside and said, you know, Sean, you're doing really well. Very impressed with, you know, the work, but you gotta improve the customer service. Like we need that to be a bit better. And he was like, wow, okay. In his head, he's thinking, I'm moving pretty fast, but I think I can move faster. So he starts to raise his level of customer service. After a couple of months, the manager pulls him aside again and says, you know, we're just really struggling with the customer service. It's just not hitting the mark. And Sean's like, man, I can't go any faster. I can't go any faster. What was happening was these generic terms meant something very different. Tim Hortons is an entirely different culture, an entirely different experience than the funky little bagel shop on Main Street in Canmore. So this is why it gets very important to not start with the terms, but start with the stories. I have another immediate example, but I don't want to eat up too much time telling stories in the 30 minutes. So if you go onto my LinkedIn, you will see today's post about MEC and another problem with the vague language around something they're saying they value, and it's clearly very important. And it's important that every employee in the store understand how to tell that story. So this is still ongoing. The language that we use, it's too vague. There's nothing concrete about it. And therefore we can't kind of wrap our hands around it and understand what it means. So that's the problem we're trying to fix. And a good way to fix it is with storytelling. So I'm going to show you just a couple of vision statements, and then we'll get to how everything we've learned right now is going to help us develop better statements. So this is related to the MEC post, and we're just going to go to PowerPoint. So here are some great visions. Microsoft's in 1975 is one of my favorite. This is what I mean by creating this vivid language that you can picture it, and maybe in 1975, nobody could fathom that happening, but they could picture it in their head. They could draw a little picture of it if they wanted, right? So it becomes concrete. And even Amazon, even though we're not talking about a physical computer, they get very specific, especially in the second part of this vision statement, about what it is they are trying to achieve. This is their point on the horizon that they are sailing towards. And by the way, Microsoft reached the island. So now they have a new vision statement, which in my opinion isn't nearly as good. It's a little, it's nice, but it's a little too broad. And Amazon, maybe they will eventually, I mean, I assume they're pretty close to reaching that island. So then they would develop a new vision statement. And then there's some great missions. I really like Walmart's. It's simple. It's what they aim to do every single day. This is what they do every single day. Help people save money so they can live better. That's their mission. Apple's in 1980, I think, is also a great mission statement to make a contribution to the world by making tools for the mind that advance humankind. So that is what they will do. Every single day, they will devote their time, energy, and resources to making tools for the mind that advance humankind. So it's not that point on the horizon. They don't talk about how the world is going to change or how their business will change. They're talking about what they're doing every single day. So I think those are good examples, but how do you get there? How do you get to this kind of, concrete, you couldn't pick Apple's 1980 mission statement and put it on the Walmart website and have it make sense. It wouldn't happen, right? But with some vision statements out there, you could. So how do we get there using storytelling? I'm just going to spotlight myself because I like to use the board. So we've talked about in our stories, a hero with a goal faces a conflict. And as we move through our story, through the setting, and we hear about the challenge or the conflict, and it's solved, we get to an outcome. Well, to create your vision statement, really what you're doing is you are describing this outcome in the future. So this is one of the stories that I talk about in the Story Compass, the value story. It starts in the present, identifies a challenge with the current state, talks about how your business is going to overcome that challenge, and then it ends in this future that you want to make desirable and familiar for your listeners so they go on the adventure with you. And that outcome, when you describe that future, that can literally become your vision statement. And you'll edit it and you'll kind of pare it down, but it needs to start with the story because you can't know what the outcome is until you've compared it to the current state. And by getting super specific about where we are, what is the big challenge we face, how is our business going to solve it, and then what is the world going to look like when we're done? By getting really specific in that story, it won't be as difficult to come up with your vision statement. So where does the mission statement lie in all of this? Well, this is the mission up here. What is that thing that you are going to do every single day to solve this challenge? What is that thing? And that's how you, and again, if you use very specific language, that becomes your mission statement. So it's two parts of the story, really, is what we're talking about in this particular vision story. I'm going to open it up just quickly for some questions about that, or comments about that before I get into the values. Right now, I guess
I'm sorry, I do have a question.
Yes, Christine, go ahead.
When coming up with this through the storytelling, do you get to your vision state first and then go back to uncover, well, what is our mission? How can we really overcome the challenge? You've identified the challenge, but you haven't gotten the details on how to overcome that challenge. I just don't know, is solution broad at this stage, and then after you create your vision, then you go back to the mission? Just curious. Or is it in this sequence that you're showing on the board, mission then vision?
Well, it's interesting because sometimes, so essentially the starting point is the vision story, so I'm going to kind of answer this in steps. So the first step is to build your vision story, which answers the question, what does our world look like now? What is the challenge in this world? How is our business going to solve it? What are we going to do to actually solve this challenge? And then what will our world look like when we're done? If we get to do all the things that we want to do, what is that world going to look like when we're done? So it might be easier to build the entire story backwards. So I just went through this story building exercise 2 weeks ago with a client in Edmonton. We can't even start to say what the vision statement is. We couldn't even do that before we had the story done from beginning to end. But with this group, they kind of had a handle on this, and they wanted to get it out of their system. So that's often how it works, is in business, we love talking about solutions and outcomes. It's harder to talk about this stuff, right? So it's like, just get it out of your system. And that's why I always show up with Post-it notes and Sharpies. So I just scribe as people talk, and then I can move it around into the story structure. But it might be easier, depending where you're at with your business, to start with the outcome, describe what do you want the world to look like? And then figure out, well, how are we going to make that happen? But answering that question might necessitate you going back to this and saying, well, do we need to revise our vision based on what we can or can't do? And then why is it important that we do that? Because what is the problem that we're trying to fix? And then to really get a handle on describing the world as it is right now. You can put it into this sequence after you're done. You don't need to build any single one first. Does that answer your question, Christine?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. This just makes it so much easier than literally starting with a blank whiteboard, and a bunch of people crowded around a boardroom table and saying, okay, what is our vision statement? It's like there's endless possibilities, especially if we're working in the language of corporate jargon. So we talked about, and it's okay to talk in terms of heroes and what is the treasure that you're trying to seize, and what is the monster that you face or the conflict that you face. It's okay to talk in those terms, because those terms are immediately relatable by everybody in the room. Remember, this whole series is about business stories that transcend the tribes. And it doesn't matter where you go in the world or at what point in human history, people are using the same story elements to tell their stories and the same story structure to tell their stories. So the language of mythology is actually one that every human on the planet understands. So when you're trying to get agreement on things, it's okay to talk in terms of story because it really helps make things concrete. Any other questions about vision mission? Okay, so let's take a look at, again, how this can impact our value statements. So I'm curious, and I'm going to let you read for a minute, which set of values do you actually trust? Like, which company do you think you want to sit down and have a coffee with and learn more about?
B.
B. Does anyone disagree? And what is it about B that makes it? Oh, I'm losing my, here we go. I'll open the chat. Does anybody disagree with B?
No, it's far more descriptive. It's got context.
Yeah, and so it is more descriptive. It has more context. So why do you think that makes it more appealing?
It feels like it's actionable, like you can actually relate to it.
Yeah.
Versus if you look at company A, quality means different to different people within the organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've already heard a tale about the pitfalls of saying customer service.
Yeah. Yeah. So misinterpretation can happen in company A, where company B is a little bit more descriptive, as someone else had said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Company B is offering you answers to your questions.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you, Christina. And so the types of questions that might come up if you're a customer looking to do business with them.
Or I was actually thinking of being an employee.
Or an employee. Yeah, you know what? I think it probably applies to anybody looking to somehow partner up with this business, whether it's an investor, an employee, or a customer, because a customer would maybe be interested in, it's best to do one thing really, really well. Perhaps, you can make money without doing evil. I mean, they're very specific here in their language. And yes, for employees, if Sean went to work for company B, he'd be pretty clear on what they want, especially the fast is better than slow. Sean would have fit in really well here.
I find it evokes more of like a feeling or a connection to what it's describing for me. Because would I want to work for them or not?
Yes,
really helpful.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, we're going to cozy up with businesses that share our values. So someone might look at this and think, oh, one thing really, really well, not for me. I like a lot of variety. I like, I want to be involved in all sorts of different aspects of business, or, fast is better than slow. I'm probably, maybe not. And that's okay. That's okay. So any guesses as to who these companies are? Like company A, any guesses? It could literally be anybody, right? Oh, my advancer isn't working here. Stand by. It's Barnes and Noble and Google are the two businesses. And the Barnes and Noble list could have been literally any company on the planet. Where Google, maybe we could transplant this to somebody else, but we'd probably find it a little tricky to do. So this is how story, again, will transform your value statements. So similar to our vision and mission statements, we want to start with the stories about the treasures that we seize on a daily basis while we are, I don't think people sail ships with oars, but anyway, we're moving that ship toward our point on the horizon, and we're delivering on something every single day. But every single day, we are also going to have these little wins. It's either because an employee did something that perfectly just fits so well with the culture and the company that it has this amazing result. Or we do something in particular for a customer and they achieve an amazing result or outcome. And the minute you start collecting those stories, now you are figuring out what you truly value. And again, if you use specific language in telling those value stories, so the questions change a little bit. They change to, what were we trying to achieve, or what was our customer trying to achieve? Remember, pick one hero, one focal point. What was the challenge that hero faced? What did our company do to solve it, or what did our employee do to solve this situation? And then what was the outcome for the hero, by the way? So it could be your business, it could be an employee, or it could be the customer. But when you, again, build this story, somewhere in here is going to be your values, and you will know what they are. In fact, in our story building session a couple of weeks ago, we told all these value stories, and then I went around the room, and this is how you can do it. I said to everybody, okay, what did you hear in that story? What does this person in the story value? And they said the most amazing sentences, and we scribed them down. We got them down because these are now going to be their value statements. And here's the thing, they have a story to back it up. And the language is going to sound more like Google because it's literally lifted from conversation, which is a lot more concrete and less formal, and the story, which is specific and creates that mental imagery. So, it's just, I always think, like this exercise a couple of weeks ago, it's been my experience for more than a decade. Don't sit down and try to figure out the words. Just sit down and start telling the stories, and they are going to float to the top. And like I said, I bumped up against this just this week in a store where every employee in the store needed to know that story. If it's something they really value and is important to them, every employee should have known how to describe it, but nobody did. So that's where you can stand out, as Duncan said. You can stand out as that company, like company B, that people think, oh, they sound interesting. Let's get to know them. So that's how we can take everything that we learned to build business stories that literally transcend the tribes. We can have our transcendent hero that people relate to, and that becomes the focal point for our story. We're going to use a structure that every human being on the planet uses to interpret the world. Remember the strings and the knots and the tapestry? This is how we do it in our own brains. So we're going to mimic that with our structure. And then we are going to communicate our vision, mission, and values in a way that everybody, regardless of background, can put their hands around, grab it like it's concrete, and start rowing towards that North Star vision. I've gone over a few minutes, so I'm going to open it up to questions now and just let all of you steer where this goes next. So what else do you want to talk about we have about 10 minutes left, about anything we've covered in the 3 sessions?
I have a question, Colleen, and it's not quite about storytelling, but it's about like vision, mission, values, and length. Like I was surprised at both Barnes and Noble's and Google's how many values they listed. And I know a mission is supposed to be something that people can repeat, like taking an employee perspective. Are there any other things that we should be conscious of? Because I just felt both of them were excessive.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Christina. That's a really good point. When we did our exercise a couple of weeks ago, we came up with 3 or 4 value statements. I personally love 3s. First of all, your employees are going to find it a lot easier to remember 3, but also it keeps them super focused on what is absolutely important in your business. And so keeping those phrases concrete and specific will help with that. But yeah, not creating a list that's so long that, you know, on any given day, someone is thinking, well, which value, like which value do I adhere to? I think there are companies like, I used to use Zappos as an example as well. Zappos was a really great company, and they were just a customer service company, but they described that really well, and they lived and breathed it inside their business. And Tony Hsieh really did a wonderful job building that culture in Zappos with very concrete, specific values. And there are some other businesses like Southwest Airlines is another one that has done a particularly good job on this front. So I think that's a really good point to make. Any other questions or comments? Are you thinking about your corporate values now?
Yeah, I guess the other real highlight for me is really thinking about what you draft, what you create when you say specifics, like how it can be misinterpreted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like your story of Sean is like perfect.
It's a perfect story. I mean, I'm sorry to say he actually lost that job, but I think it was never really a fit. So, and yeah, I think had they communicated or had he communicated, quite frankly, you know, it would have been a better outcome perhaps, but who knows? So yeah, the story about Sean is very perfect. And I think a lot of the times we're trying to do these things, you know, we want to do them well, but we're only allotting so much time and resources to them. This is a lengthy exercise. You know, when I was with my client up in Edmonton a couple of weeks ago, it was 2 days with the executive team. But I'll tell you, they have content now that is going to help them go into their strategy meeting with a lot more focus and direction, and they're specific and narrowly focused on just a few values that really are the ones they care about. I'd be curious if anyone has a question, just jump in, but I would be curious what your key takeaway is. Christina just gave one that's wonderful, just in how to be specific with the language, but maybe just pop it in the chat for us so we can see what you are taking away from these sessions. But I'd be happy to have anybody unmute their microphone and jump in too.
It's Faye.
Hi, Faye.
I just thought it was kind of interesting because we've done quite a bit of work lately on mission and vision, purpose, not necessarily values yet. And I thought we'd done a pretty good job. And when I go back, like there is maybe some story there, but there's maybe some descriptive words missing now. That makes me rethink it.
Yeah.
And I think when it was first mentioned, there wasn't really a quick story behind it. And it would maybe be clear, like our vision or mission couldn't be the Walmart one. It could be some other manufacturing companies, but
yep.
I mean, I'm okay with that. But I think because people heard words like obsessed and got afraid, but we didn't have a story to show that it was a good obsessed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They took obsession as stalker, violent.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So just that made me think about the words could be right, but if you didn't have that 1 minute story for why obsession was good, that's maybe why it didn't land right with some of the divisions.
It could be. I think that's a pretty good insight. It's interesting because I had this executive team, and it's always, you know, they work in the financial industry. So, you know, they're accountants and financial whizzes. And And yet we were talking dragons and treasures and, but I think you're right. Like once they started telling the stories and we started repeating them back, and it's like you stop worrying about a specific word because you have the entire context, and you realize you don't necessarily remember that word, or if you do you've got the context for it. So I think that's a really good insight. So it might be worth telling the stories. And by the way, even if you're putting a team together at the office that hasn't worked together before, you can have your own mini vision and mission within the company. You don't have to be at the executive level doing this for the entire organization. It's good to have vision and mission for a project, or a team that's coming together for the first time, or whatever it is. I think it's very helpful for whoever is leading. Go on. Was someone else asking a question?
No, I just unmuted, but I was just in agreement with what you just said. Actually, I mean, for me personally, going into some pretty intense meetings next week, there's a huge discord between several business units that are all supposed to be working collaborative, and any other buzzword you want to use for that team or family, which I always hate hearing, but it's I think I saw in the chat as well. Like it's the being able to get the emotion and the personality and the humanity, I think, embedded into what you're trying to say. As you said before, Colleen, drop the jargon, be human, let's talk. Yeah. And it's amazing how that'll drive the conversation and the vision that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the most productive things you can do is just assign somebody to be the journalist in the room. And by that, I mean the person who's going to grab the quotes. Because when you're talking in conversational style, you stop worrying about specific words and you're just telling the story. And if you have someone who will, and I don't mean take notes, there is a difference, because a note taker will summarize and reduce everything to a single vague word. What you want is a scribe. You want somebody who is literally going to write down when you say something that's like, oh, wow, I really like how Christina said that, or I love how Duncan said that. They're going to write it word for word. And if you can assign someone that in your meetings, you'll come up with fantastic content. I'm going to show you one last slide just to let you know that, we've really just scratched the surface in these 3 sessions on building business stories to transcend the tribes. I have talked about the book, The Story Compass, which is available on Amazon. This is a new offering. So I was asked by a couple of clients last year to do an online course that people could take wherever they are in the world. A lot of my clients don't always have the ability to bring everybody into the same room. So the Story Compass Online is a 4-hour self-directed course that dives into the 4 types of stories that you must have in your business, how to use the structure and the hero, goal, conflict building blocks that we've been talking about for each of those 4 stories. And then it actually requires you to record your own stories, to tell them out loud and submit them. And they actually come across my desk. And that shouldn't make anybody afraid. I've worked with some of you one-on-one before. I'm a friendly, kind coach, but I tell you what I think too. So anyway, the course is challenging, and it allows anybody to move through at their own pace. So if you'd like more information about that, you can use the QR code to get to the website, or just contact me directly. And the other thing is, I still do live in-person workshops, and I would love to bring this to your teams, because going through some customized role play scenarios, getting that immediate feedback and workshopping the stories can have a transformative effect on how you talk about your business. So I would love to talk to anybody about doing that as well. Let me know. And if you enjoyed these webinars, once again, please give a shout out on LinkedIn. It's my best form of internet marketing right now. So I love the kudos on LinkedIn so that other people have the opportunity to attend and learn from the Story Compass. So unless there are any straggling questions, and please jump in if there are.
Thank you so much. This has been super informative and helpful.
Oh, thank you, Duncan. And thank you, Christine. And thank you, Chris, for the comments. And Tennille, good luck. Good luck with your story. And Faye, good luck with the vision mission. Maybe you can go back in there and drag them all into the room again, just to get some clarification. But I wish all of you the best of luck with your storytelling. And I will see you again on another webinar.
Yep.
Thank you, Colleen.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.